No, it has to be like. You're in. That's, I think it's my research, but this is.
I don't think that's right.
Yeah, so then I.
John.
I'm in for the minute, right? And. There's one problem. When you have.
Lucy, do you have your cell phone with you? It's an app. Okay. I wonder. It's your, whenever you text. It's always, that's that. And it goes into my sleeping. I don't get it. It comes as an email. And I know it's a setting on your, because I have had that happen to me. And I'm one person that I text, so the same with our own characters. So I know it's a setting on the phone, but I can't roll it out. So we'll work.
You know, it's funny, that's what this conference is, darkly, and we can share the sessions. I don't know, you want me to look at it, it's so hard, you want to do what? I, well, you have to be.
Okay, guys, it's time to start. I didn't realize I was in another room, wasn't paying attention. So actually after this, sorry, I'm late. I did. Okay. Okay, so we'll do the work meeting. I had to start at 6 o'clock just because I didn't know how long it's gonna take to talk about these different things on the work meeting. I want to give us enough time, so we're not rushing. So, the first thing that the reason Stacy is here, I have on here to talk about weddings and DJs at Heritage Town Square. And Crystal and Misty and I know exactly, and Sean out in the audience. We're all at the fall festival when the music we were playing, which was not very loud, went off, and then we could hear just this loud pounding music that was coming from here from the DJ that was had at this wedding reception. And even we were at the park and you could just feel the thump inside your chest. It was so loud. So we need to figure out what to do. And my immediate reaction at the time was to say, no more DJs at weddings. And Crystal was like, no, we can just reduce the decibels, have a decibel meter. And so I wanted us to talk about what we want to do so that and there's also been complaints not just about the loud noise from the DJ, but also sometimes when they have their strobe lights that they have. So I just wondered what do we want to do about the DJs at weddings? And I know you and I talked about the other day, Jean, and you mentioned a decibel meter and a way to limit setting a decibel level. And I can tell you I have done zero amount of research on decibel meters, but I was assuming surely that we could get like a decibel meter that we attach to that little shelter over there. And then we see when they hit a certain decibel level. And I don't know, that was just what ideas do you guys have?
The hard thing is you can't really make them go away 100% because part of the wedding is dancing. So,
I just mean we could have live music instead of
right,
DJs.
yeah,
I don't need no music, not that by any stretch of the imagination.
Amy, what part of your, you can, off the top of your head, just because it's kind of thrown at you. What part of your group does, or your reservation, how many live bands and how many DJs do you have, which is,
I think we've had the most in this last little bit and we've had the whole time. So I would say, has it been 4 or 5 months or maybe even a 6-month period? I think we've had 3. And I know that we've had noise complaints. I'm talking about 3 noise complaints.
Oh, okay.
and so the DJs, though, were those the nights the DJs were playing, or were those the nights the live music?
I think both. They were pretty loud because I think they had a DJ as well. But I think a simple fix in the contract that says a decimal, because we don't have anything to tell them how loud. Some people automatically know that they're pretty loud.
Well, we can put something, we can have something in the contract, but I think you still have to have a town code.
Right,
Yeah.
we do have a partial one on our, we have a decibel code on our gas stations, on the pumps themselves, there is a decimal. But I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, what we were talking about was the idea of putting in a permanent fixed decibel meter that
Right.
goes on the property, so they can monitor themselves.
Yeah.
So you don't have somebody run down here and point it down at the speakers and all that, so
Right,
something like that.
Yeah,
Are your complaints coming from various citizens or one citizen?
mostly from certain citizens that live right around.
I was gonna say, it's gotta be the
We've
one
got-
that lived at
We've
Quebec.
got ones around, I'm just wondering if it's various citizens complaining or if it's one individual or 2 individuals over and over.
I think Crystal's been making the phone call on that, and then she'll text me, so she's probably better referral for that, but. Yeah, I definitely feel like we could put something in the contract itself and maybe have a penalty if they don't, I don't know.
I wanted to know, do you have any, reservations for weddings coming up?
Not for a while. We
Okay.
have a birthday party coming up,
Okay, well, I was thinking that given that it was starting to get chilly,
right?
that there's not gonna be any outdoor weddings anyway. And
Right.
so that probably gives us enough months to, work on a noise ordinance and decibels and all this, and then be able to, reformat or modify the contract. And so I just want to make sure if you have any reservations coming up while we start to work on this.
Not until the spring, from what I remember. And so, yeah, I think we'll be okay.
Gina, it's all right. I'd like to hear.
Sure.
He's the only resident that lives right here. Thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of enjoy the noise,
Well, that doesn't happen.
You would.
but just because, my kids like dances and so it's kind of fun for them. The only criticism I would have is we don't know when those are happening as much, and I know that's going to be fixed with websites and calendars. And so that's the only thing, it's like, well, what's going on there?
Okay.
It'd be nice to know, but most of the DJs that we talk to, I would come over and talk with them, and you mentioned before, hey, look, there's a few citizens that might be playing, so you might get somebody to come over, somebody may come over and tell you to turn it down. But for me, I don't care as much. The live music, it's actually kind of been fun that the live music is, some songs are loud, some are not, and so you never know. But if they're just playing regular music, it's easy for them to turn it down if they know about it.
Yeah.
So that's why I was asking Stacy if it's in the contract.
It's not in the contract, but we need to try to tell them there's homes by, be considerate, and most people do. But everybody's loud is different, and everybody's culture or whatever is different, so people celebrate in different ways. So we just have to be specific, I guess, and hopefully have everybody.
Not to mention the neighbors are right on top of this building, right?
Right.
There's no,
Well,
Yeah.
there's no best.
even that last one that we heard at the park, we had received a wedding invitation for it, and they specifically said on the invitation, music will be, dancing will be from this time to this time. And if that could be put in a calendar, then we know what's gonna happen, it's gonna end at 8:30. And he did, as soon as they started to hit, music was, wasn't turned off, they turned it off for a while, and then they just turned it on just while they were cleaning up and had some light. So it's just more about communicating to those around it, the area would be just as sufficient.
I do know that Hal and Teresa said one time, that the music was so thumping that all the things they had hanging on the wall went crooked, and they all, the next day they had to go through their whole house and straight everything. And, Elise next door, I know she gets, migraines from the lights and the loud noise, so she likes to know so she can leave.
Probably just give this section for that specifically in the contract that has our expectations. Especially for the DJ, and maybe we should have the DJ sign it as well and have him. You know, I feel like if they're having a DJ, they're equipped, they're probably under some kind of a contract with them and they're paying them. So they need to be responsible of their business, so.
I still think we should do a noise ordinance and set a decibel level. You have any input, Paul?
Yes, and obviously the biggest problem right now is around here with DJs, but I've been receiving complaints in other parts of town.
About the music and.
No, not about music, just about the loud parties going on. So it's not, so I think a noise ordinance is a good solution. Decibel limits is probably the more objective way of dealing with it. And you can set the decibel limits different from daytime and nighttime. So I think that's the way to go. We have an objective standard, and that way, when there's a short-term rental, big party, someplace else in town, we have it covered, and we're not going back to reinvent the whole thing all over again.
Any input from any, input, Leroy?
No, I think an ordinance would be a good way, plus the contract. We need to put it in for this building. The ground.
All right, so that's that for item A then. So item B, I didn't quite know how to term this, so I just used the word illegal. I don't know that illegal is the correct term that I should use. But
How did you know I was going to make an objection?
I want to know you, Leroy. So, hold on, let me check something here. We had I heard from the auditor, someone at the state auditor's office. And they were asking about the compensation, and, you know, we did an ordinance back last month. And so he was saying that we need to decide what to do about pay that elected and appointed officials received during the time where there were pay increases and they were not done by ordinance, which the state code requires that they be done by ordinance. And we have, he said that we have to decide as a town council what we're going to do about that. And are we going to pursue recovery for the monies that were paid when there was no ordinance that supported the money that was paid? Do we recover that from everyone who was paid? Or do we say we're gonna let it go? And, but either way, we have to decide in an open meeting, and whatever our decision is, it has to be by ordinance. And so I figured we could talk about it, and then maybe next month we could have an ordinance where we say what we are going to do about that. And, then I have to send him a copy of our ordinance that we come up with. So when we did the ordinance last month, I thought I had a copy here. We had in the ordinance, there was attached a,
I had a spreadsheet showing the
Spread-
previous year.
yes, it showed. I remember back when, Bruce was mayor and he increased the pay for mayor. We did it by ordinance. And when we increased the pay for mayor, the only pay we increased was the mayor. We didn't increase anybody else in town council, or planning commission, either one. And then, there have been raises over the last 4 years, 4 to 5 years, without an ordinance. And so the question is, should everyone have been paid what was the pay by ordinance back when it was raised, the ordinance was done and Bruce was mayor? And we can decide to say, no, it was an error, it's okay, we won't make that error again, and we'll just ignore the overpay, this, but we have to decide what we want to do. And of course, in a work meeting, we don't really decide, but we can certainly throw in our opinion.
My opinion is, an error does not necessarily mean malfeasance. Nobody knew they were doing anything wrong. And I don't think you're gonna go back and recover it from the guys that are no longer on the council.
Well,
That's pretty.
well, I told the auditor when we were talking, I said, I certainly would never go against anyone on planning commission because they had nothing to do with any of this. It was a town council decision. They have no say so. And I said, so I certainly would never go against anyone who's on planning commission. And I said, the only issue is, town council, and if town council should have known. And, but no, I agree with you. I don't think there was any malfeasance. It's just not knowing.
I think.
You know, I don't think we should go back and recoup that money, because how are you gonna recoup the taxes that they're taking?
Okay,
So
good point.
I would vote that we, from now on, we'll make sure we have an ordinance. And we just move on and let it stand in their house. Yeah. In every May, we adopted a budget.
Mhm.
And when we adopted that budget, it was disclosed to the public what those increases were in each council member and P and Z. And then every month, we look at the checks that are issued. And so the public is aware of what's paid to the council and the mayor.
But they have to be by ordinance
Right,
and
I
I think.
understand that, I
Right.
understand that. What I'm saying is,
They
we
did.
didn't deliberately not disclose that to the public. That's all that I'm trying to say.
Okay.
So we were not, that's what I objected to the illegal
Oh,
terminology, because it was disclosed to the public every month and at the time the budget was
Well,
approved.
as I said, I didn't know quite what word to use to just how to describe this, so I just used the word illegal.
Clearly, the clerk, the previous clerk didn't know it, the attorney didn't know it, nobody caught it. My suggestion would be we do a resolution now, absolving the mistakes of the past so that it's written, it's resolved.
Mhm.
Not just saying, oh, we're gonna accept it, but actually put it in a resolution, saying mistakes were made, we're resolving it, we're going to accept it as it was, and we're going to, that would be my suggestion.
You have words?
Oh, no, we caught part of it, which was, it's not just the fact there was no ordinance. There was no public hearing with respect to the ordinance, and both go hand in hand. And I think if you talk to the auditor, that would be also one of his concerns. What I'd like to see is also hear from the public. I've gone through this in the past, something that's a little bit different than this. So I know how difficult it is. What I want to know is from Heath, is what the process is, because if I'm correct, the process would be you would have to bring a civil action. So then it creates the town suing its own citizens in how many different lawsuits, depending on who you decide to collect and not collect against. And then how much of it can you collect back, because is there a statute of limitations with respect to collecting that? So if we're going back so many years, part of it may be precluded because of the statute of limitations. And then how much money are we talking about? Because when you add the cost, Keith bringing a lawsuit against each of our own citizens, it's probably going to outweigh the cost of any recovery. But those are figures we should know, even with our gut feeling as to where we're going. I think we should at least do the legwork and figure out those answers. Because we do have some citizens upset, and if the cost is going to outweigh the benefit of collecting it, there's your answer right there. Doesn't matter what you did or did not.
Not to mention, we talk a lot about bringing the town together. So going after citizens, you're just gonna rip the town apart. That's gonna be the hardest feeling.
Yeah, and you have to weigh that against it, yeah. So, but I think we should look at all those questions. So how much money are we talking about? What's the process? And is there statute of limitations?
Questions for Heath.
Those are questions for Heath, yeah.
He did call me today, texted and asked what this was about, and I explained it, but we didn't talk process or anything like that, so I'll see what he says.
But I agree with you, Gene, that, you know, like I said, it requires the town suing a lot of its own citizens. And so we don't want to do that lightly. No.
Misty, do you have anything to add to any of this?
Being the caboose, pretty much covered every one of my comments, because I have a little bit of Leroy's comments and a little bit of Paul, I don't want to repeat them, but I do feel like it's something we need to tread lightly with, because it does involve all citizens. It's not just the people who are taking the fairly from.
Okay, so maybe what I'll do is I'll ask Keith to write the resolution or ordinance, whichever way, although the auditor did say it needs to be an ordinance, not a resolution.
Yeah, and just draft the ordinance the way I think you got it. The building is now, and then it becomes amended at the time, so not to proceed to collection, and then we can move on it, yea or nay.
Okay, so item C, revision of the Virgin Towns Personnel Manual. I had mentioned a few months back that I wanted to update our personnel manual, and I had looked at some manuals online that I thought had good stuff. And so I sent you all a link to a website, and I said, look at these three, the ones that were the three most recent ones. Because my thought was the most recently adopted personnel manuals from other towns would have the ones they're going to address the most current issues that face towns. And so what were in some of these personnel manuals that I liked, they had policies regarding social media, policies regarding email, policies regarding if you used a town provided phone, no expectation of privacy on town email accounts. So they had a lot of things that had to do with technological changes in the past few years. And then they also just had some policies, I think, that came out of lawsuits that they had added some policies. And so that's why I wanted us to look at all of them. And I figured we could just take some of theirs and take some pieces from this personnel manual, this personnel manual, and this personnel manual, and cobble them together and say, here's the version of the personnel manual. What do you have there?
Did you send that?
Yes, I sent the link to I sent it from my personal email. I did not send it to the town email because I was on my,
You know what you sent to mine. It was on yesterday.
I just find problem. I think I sent it to zoning.
And what I handed Gene was for the mayor. Is that's just, this happened to come the day that, the agenda came out. So,
Okay,
kind of, and for the audience, that's just,
it's a seminar, it's a,
Seminar.
it's a flyer for seminars on drafting and revising personnel manuals. Okay, let me find,
I got it.
you found it?
Yeah, it came-
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
You know what you could do, and I hate to say this, Gene's gonna kill me. But.
are you
Gene-
talking which Gene?
No, that.
That Gene, okay,
Gene G.
Okay.
That he was, working personnel for him,
Mhm.
so maybe you could delegate to him to.
Well, he did tell me that, there are no original personnel manuals.
No.
But everybody does exactly what I'm proposing, which is cobbled
Yeah.
together from this one, this one, this one.
That's what I'm saying, is he would take the things and put it together and then bring us a recommendation for us to look at.
I think if we're all looking at stuff, I mean, in my mind, if you're gonna do it piecemeal anyway, just bring in a section, we can discuss it. Say,
Oh,
yes,
okay.
we want to know, we don't want, and put that into the bucket.
Okay, I like
It'd be a
that.
lot easier.
Bring it in sections, okay.
Yeah, because I mean, policy manual is really big. It's a lot of work. I've written for a few companies, it's just a lot of work, but if we pull out sections, like if we want to discuss whether we want PTO or holiday pay, sick pay, or, you know, things broken out, that's something we can discuss, and then say, well, let's move that into the bucket and go to the next section. Takes some time, but we ought to be able to finish it up. Or Libra and I are out of here.
It can be
I looked-
your party gift to the town.
I looked at some of those and they're 40 or 50 pages
Oh,
long.
yeah.
Policy manuals are very small and it takes.
Yeah.
a lot of-
Well, one of them had listed in there, they had included in the personnel manual, job descriptions, but it was a small town. I was looking only at the ones that had to do with small towns. I was not looking at things that had to do with big cities at all. And, they had their job descriptions in there, a section. In the appendix in the back, they had all the job descriptions, they had laid out their pay scales and all of this, and so that was like, this is a good.
Policy manuals should be comprehensive like that. It should have everything in it. That you can possibly have for starting, and it should have the ranges, it should have your insurance package, it should have everything on it, should be in this. That's what it's like.
That there's a
it,
dig.
because it's HR from the end.
But our personnel manual is so long.
Yes,
Yes,
it is, and it has some. It can have conflicting information in it, so.
yes, Sean.
Quick comment and suggestion, when I took over managing the mosquito district, we went through and did a whole policy change. And the idea of just doing a piecemeal section by section is really good. The suggestion would be also look at the county. They have a really good policy, and not all of it will apply, but.
You mean their own personnel manual, the county's personnel manual?
Yes, they've got a good one. I kind of used that as a little bit of a template, and then took these other pieces and did cut and paste.
Mhm.
And then each piece has to be then gone through by each, because then you have to change it to adapt it just to the town.
My suggestion would be to do it in sections, decide what we want, and then turn it over to an HR professional to make sure that it meets the standards for state and county and municipalities. So you just put everything together, let them take it and do their refinement touches on it, create a manual. So you have to probably hire an outside person to do the compilation with them, but we can go through and say, yeah, we don't want this in there, we do want that.
Mhm.
And save a lot of money to do that. There's companies that do that. Actually, by the piece, so you can hire HR representatives.
I wonder if it's something that Muni Code already does.
Unicode,
We're already connected with them. I wonder if it's something that they already do.
my house.
You mean the HR manuals?
Yeah, because our Muni Code's already We're already involved with them there.
Elimination happens, like,
That they might have one that can start, get us on the right direction.
Yeah, except that's gonna be so broad, it's gonna cover the US, and it's not gonna be Utah.
They bring them down
Further down.
specifically by state. That's how that's how they codify our ordinance.
And I know that in some states, insurance company or the league will have, example, or just a model ordinance that they pass down, I don't know if our league doesn't know.
Now, we're a member of the Utah Small Towns League. Now,
Utah
they-
League of Cities and Towns.
Now, they have to-
We can look and see. They do have a sample, because, you know, these, I was looking at that website that, I sent you guys the link to is actually, it's not, a Utah, it's not like it is for the state of Washington. And I didn't understand the municipal something services, but I took this to be their version of the Utah League of Cities and Towns, and that's what this manuals for coming. So this is coming up in December, so I've got a month to get ready.
I get a dozen rolls a day. So, and Gene, did I hear you like job descriptions don't go in with this no manual?
They should, but
That's
what I was saying is you want to have it, you want to make sure.
No, I agree with you.
Understand.
I think it's great.
You can have-
Job description and you can edit them as you see fit.
Problem is personal manual get real thick and you could add.
Which is what Christie, I don't know, sorry, I don't know where that. I don't even know anybody named Christie. So,
They get their, I know that, I worked in Apache County and ours, when I was running their payroll, ours was only about that big. But that was like 15 years ago. And it was pretty comprehensive. It did have the job descriptions and everything. But it was only that big. So we could still include it, and that they're a small county.
But I do like, starting with small pieces. And then working out, because that's, you know, the old saying, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? If you're going to put a big person on them, that's the way to do it.
When it has to fit Virgin, because we are small and unique that way, so.
Yeah, but there's big chunks you can just grab, like the NDA requirements, that's not governed by us, we pull that, and that's a section we don't go on to discuss, that has.
It has its own.
So you can pull some of the big ticket items, and that's part of your manual automatically, then it comes down to things like, you know, how you want to do discipline for an employee, or how you want to handle pay raise, or what you do when you have an employee that starts making, because he's been here so long, making more than the mayor. How do you set up?
Oh, no, that's easy.
Bonus year, and continue to raise the pace, things like that have to be considered, that's more tailored, but I think your big ticket items, you can just plug right in automatically.
okay,
Theft and, you know, stuff like that, there's
I
no.
think
town
it's
has
needed,
that.
but I think it probably already contains a lot of that, so we need to go through the original itself.
all right, so then I guess next month I will pull out a section and gather some different, since I was talking about these 3 personnel manuals that I like, I can take the difference, choose a section and say, okay, here's this one, this one, this one, and the county. And we can sit down and draft and work on it, revise the section. Okay, yeah. Fine. Okay, so then that gives us section D here at the work meeting, and we can talk a little bit about this, and then we'll probably have time for a short break before we reconvene for the regular meeting. So, if it's okay with you, I will just tell everybody how we ended up showing up with this. And Dean and I have been having meetings once a week to talk about things. And one of the things that came up at one of our meetings, and he had mentioned this actually to me months ago, was that he really doesn't like doing code enforcement. And so we talked about that more recently. And I said, if he doesn't want to do code enforcement, then we really have got to hire a code enforcement officer, and he was agreeable. And so here we are, and so what I explained was the way things are in Hulu. There's a section on code enforcement, and then there's a section on the zoning administrator, and then it says the zoning administrator is the code enforcement officer. And so what we're gonna have to do is go through the code and pull out everything that talks about code enforcement. And talk about this being for the code enforcement officer, but I pulled out, I put the various sections I went through. I searched and pulled up every place that had zoning administrator or code enforcement. And pulled these sections out and said, those are the ones that's all I could find where they talk about this. And we have to go through and figure out what do we want to change, and then we'll write an ordinance that shows what we're changing. And so I figured we would talk about each of these sections and what do we want to change, what do we not want to change. And this is to do with code enforcement.
Can I just clarify a couple things
Okay.
from my seat?
Okay,
I don't realize in the past, small town, you've got multiple jobs with one person, but the way I see the zoning administration job is it goes from, it should entail things that go from the time that the person pulls a permit or starts working on a permit until they have the CFO. So red tagging, that kind of enforcement stuff that goes with the construction should sit with that zoning administrator job. But going around, dogs on the loose, my neighbor's water's running into my yard. This guy's making too much noise, that kind of stuff is very burdensome, and it can tie in a lot of time. And there's really, most of the time, it's between two neighbors and we're playing mother. And I don't enjoy doing that, I'll tell you right now. I do it because I have to, but a lot of times we don't even follow our own ordinances as far as getting stuff through a legitimate complaint, because we're trying to do good by the town. But in my mind, the first thing we ought to do is set. We've discussed this for 3 years, Keith knows. We've discussed this for at least 3 years, that we don't have teeth behind our ordinances. So
yes,
that's in my mind where we ought to start and say, let's get the, if you have a dog on the loose 2 or 3 times or whatever, this is gonna be the misdemeanor, class B misdemeanor, or whatever that is associated with that. Decide which ordinance we want and then get the language behind it. Then we're in a position where we can put a code enforcer in, where they actually have some authority to do something. Because right now it's still, we've struggled with this for a long time. Rebecca was working on it, and I think it's kind of dropped since. But
so,
he might have more insight on that.
yes, Crystal.
Just a comment on what Jean was stating about our ordinances, our new prosecuting attorney stated that he wanted to help with what is appropriate to put on our ordinances.
For code enforcement. Okay,
As far as penalties and stuff go, if it's a misdemeanor or infraction or
okay.
felony, things like that.
Because I know one of the things when I talked with Heath about this months ago, you had proposed that we do something similar to Tokerville, where you said Tokerville had gone through their codes and looked at all the different things that you could enforce or enforce with penalties and figure out what really matters, because some of it, you can't enforce everything. And so what really is the top things that we want to enforce? Correct? Or am I simplifying too much?
And that's a request that our previous prosecutor had the town here, is that we needed to go through our ordinances and designate certain infractions as being having a criminal penalty. And so that it can be enforced by criminal prosecution, even if it's simple as just a misdemeanor. But the Tokerville City did that very same thing. They've gone through and they designated certain criminals. They have a problem problem with people operating businesses without a license. That's one that was. And I know that we have had that problem here in the town, but it would be simple as going through our ordinances and, probably pulling out 10 to 15 of the biggest offenders and making them, and then probably sitting down that list with, the county's prosecutor and get his idea, the level of the, but
Of offense.
yeah, the offense they should be.
Keith, does Utah allow for civil infractions versus criminal?
It does, and our ordinance is rife with places where there is civil infractions and citation fines, and we have no real good means of who assesses those, how we track them, and whether people pay them or not. And the nice thing about the agreement that we presently have with Washington County and with us having a prosecutor and a public defender in place that we could prosecute in the Washington County Justice Court, anything that we designate as being criminal, everything runs through the clerk's office at the Justice Court. They track everything. If the judge decides that they want to allow the person to pay the fine over the criminal fine over 3 different installments, they can do it, and that's all tracked by them. And the arrangement that we have with them is that they keep a certain percentage of our fine revenue that we receive. And the rest of it would be not us.
We were kind of hoping that we could have enough to cover the code enforcement officer's salary.
So one of the things we
Hey.
changed in our ordinances not long after I got started in there was, and this shows how old the ordinances were. The code enforcement for the town was the ordinances that are written the way they were requirement by the state to have a post-certified enforcement. And so it used to be, you could go out and do the enforcement for the town just like a cop. Now the state requires you have a post-certified individual, you have to be a cop to be able to cite or do things like that. And so we just changed it to say zoning administrator to where there was somebody that was responsible, but there's nothing we can do 9 times out of 10, but just go and yell at somebody, and that doesn't do it.
Until we have,
Right, or if the law enforcement, and this is where I was working with Rebecca, if we had law enforcement do it, a lot of times it was just law enforcement come up and catch a dog and they tell the person, you gotta come pick up your dog and pay $20. The town doesn't even hear about it. Whereas if we used Rebecca, then she could send them, I don't even know the process, but she'd send them a deal, tell them you gotta come to court. But
So-
in the end, the time and the stuff that went into it, there was no recuperation of it.
I think the simple way that we can
Yeah,
do
that's
it,
right.
if we went through and designated 20 different items within the Virgin Town Code as being criminal. And subject to the class B misdemeanor, for instance. And we have that list and we could provide it, then we can make note if we have a call. Or multiple calls from residents with an issue or a problem. We can notify the sheriff's department next time they have someone on patrol to stop in and speak with Crystal or whoever. She tells them where the complaint is located, and here's the section, the probable sections that if they find that is happening, that they can cite them for it, because the officers, they know the Utah criminal code forward and backwards. They don't know our town ordinance at all, so we would have to give them the section and operate a business without a business license, this section of the Virgin Town Code, and that's an issue. He would hand it to them, and after that, he just drops off the other receipt, and it starts through the process. Our prosecutor gets notified of it, it gets set for a hearing date, and it just runs. But we need to decide what are the bigger offenders that we need to put some prosecutorial teams with.
So, and that's all under the Utah criminal code process. What's the civil infraction process in Utah?
There is not a set one, it is left to the municipalities to come up with their own. We have a code enforcement, a very small code enforcement section in the ordinances.
Could we run the civil infraction through the justice court with a similar agreement?
They will not, they will only have criminal matters.
And a note, just for everybody's understanding, even if we write top 3 or 4, Washington, sorry, I lived in Washoe County and I'm in Washington, so Washington County Sheriff's Office, and this is pre-Brooksby, but I imagine the policy's the same. If we want them to enforce municipal code, then there's a fee attached. It was like $5,000 to $15,000 a year for them to enforce 2 to 3 of the city ordinances. So they'll do county, they'll do state, but if the municipal code is not something that's covered by the county or the state, then they require an extra payment.
Paul, I think I can tell you struggle. We would need to have a complete administrative.
I kind of figured that.
Yeah, like administrative law judge, we would have to have somebody who handles, those types of things. So you could have a code enforcement officer citing people, but if they want to challenge that and appeal it, have to come before someone who we'd have to hire to be an administrative law judge, and we'd have to have someone there representing the city's or the town's interest there, and we can't do that through the justice court. They will probably only set up an all going to handle it.
Right, and that could be done, and it could probably be structured in a cost efficient way. But the thing what you saw me struggling with is some offenses, I think, warrant, like you're saying, warrant criminal penalties, even if it's a misdemeanor. Some offenses don't. They warrant something else. They need to be enforced. You need to have consequences, but you don't need to have a criminal misdemeanor against you. And so that's what I struggle with. It's just that process of, okay, we're gonna deem that these 12 criminal offenses, but the rest, there's no consequences. So that's what I was struggling with, is trying to figure out how we could do that in a cost efficient way.
That's the challenge. I think we say the cost efficient way with limited budget.
Okay. We're gonna take a break. We will come back at 7 and reconvene. And when we get to section D on new business, where we're talking about code enforcement, I'm gonna make sure that Crystal can pull up the code and show it on the screen so we can all be looking at it and know what we're talking about. All right, we'll take a break and come back at 7. Okay, so, Chief, stand up here and say something. Oh, that's on. Turn it on. Yeah. So it's swings, so then and he says something and doesn't, oh, down you can come in.
All right.
I'll stand in there.
You can stand up here and you can say something. So we were sitting here talking, Paul was talking, Gene talking, or he's talking, and you have 3 screens across. And so this is recording the audio and video. And so the video we can have a separate audio.
That's right.
And so this is really fuzzy as you see that up there. All right, I'm gonna pause this again until we're ready to.
What's that? Yeah. Okay, it's 7, let's get back to the meeting. It's on, I put it back on just a minute ago. Okay. All right, so I've called the meeting back to order, and Leroy is going to do the opening prayer, and then we'll do the pledge of allegiance.
Our dear Father in heaven, we're grateful that we can gather together as a community. We pray that your spirit will be in this meeting, your spirit of empathy for one another and desire to come together for the betterment of this small little town we have, which we love and enjoy living there. We are grateful for that opportunity that God has given us. We say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. You all will join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
All right. Does anyone on the town council have any conflicts of interest with anything on the agenda tonight, on tonight's agenda? I do not.
No,
No.
No.
No. Thank you. Okay, council comments. I have some things to report. So I spoke with Rocky Mountain Power about the lights in town, about replacing the lights in the rest of town of everything except Desert Gardens. And they said they'll put us on the schedule, but it'll be probably December or January before they are here to change out the lights with the dark sky compliant lights. And they did say that when the lights go on, they are very bright in the beginning, and they give them about 60 days, and then they just start going down until they get below what they want to be. So everybody should be prepared when they're installed, that they'll be bright, But this will not be Desert Gardens, because we won't be changing your lights. And you guys, we still have to do that survey. But so that's what I have to report on the lights for Desert Garden for Rocky Mountain Power. I went to the Crystal, if you would, while I'm talking to them about this next topic, if you would go ahead and bring up that that thing from the Water Conservancy District, that study. Because I'll talk about that next. The ULCT, I went to a conference from the Utah League of City Towns first week of October. And during there was two particular conferences, seminars that I went to that were, one was particularly good. It was all about First Amendment free speech and what constitutes free speech, when you can restrict speech and when you can't as a town. That was really good. And they need to make that a much bigger part of their conference next year. Anyway, the guy who did the presentation, the attorney, has a chart, a flow chart that he uses, that when people have something to say, he goes through the flow chart to figure out if you can restrict or not restrict. I'm like, I want that guy's flow chart. Like, that's really good. So I just so happened to be sitting next to his boss in the meeting, didn't know it, but I was like, I want that guy's flow chart. And the guy sitting next to me says, I'm his boss. He said, I will get that flow chart for you. I'm like, yes. So I just have to follow up on that. So that was nice. But the other thing that was really interesting, the mayor of he wasn't the mayor, just this one person from this one town, new town, Mill Creek, that was it. He was talking about their new town hall that they were building. And I thought it was really interesting what he explained. Their town hall, of course, where they're located is heavily populated, but their town hall is 6 stories. And what they did, and they put it in a section of town where there's some commerce. The bottom level of the building, they rent out for retail to help pay the bills for the town hall. Second level is the library. Third level is a police station. Fourth and fifth are the town hall. And then the 6th is an outdoor deck that they rent out for people can use for events. Anyway, the income from the top level and the bottom level pay for the town hall that they're building. And I'm like, we could do that. Could we do that on our piece of property up there on the highway?
She's not
Just a
not
not a 6-story building by any means, just a 2-story. And so I thought I wanted to throw that out there for us to think about, because it's an acre of land. And I have verified with the scouts that even though the land was discussed as being for a fire station, there is no restriction that it be for a fire station in the donation papers, and they don't care what we do with it. And if we wanted to make it a town hall, they don't care. So I was wondering if we could potentially do something like that with the first floor, like something that fronts the highway could be some sort of retail that we would rent out. Keep restrictions on what it is, because you sure don't want a restaurant with these smells going up into the town hall. But I wondered if we could have like a front section that was retail, and around the back side could be post office, and maybe, because I know the sheriff has said that they would like to have a substation up here for this whole canyon. And so I thought if we could have like a post office, police substation, sheriff substation around the back, and then the top level could be a town hall. So that's just, I'm throwing that out there, and I'm certainly open to any feedback from anybody in town, anybody who's listening on Zoom, anybody in the room, anybody who reads some minutes, any feedback from anybody, because this could take, you know, a couple of years. This is not like this is something that would get going right away. So just thought I'd throw that out there. So the last thing I want to bring up in council comments is the meeting for the Water Conservancy District. I went to. Let's see, the last one I went to was in August. I missed the one in September, and there's one coming up. But what we've been talking about at the Water Conservancy District meetings, this is a joint meeting. There's a meeting once a month called the Council of Government, and it's all the mayors of the county. And we have one meeting. And then there's a meeting with the Water Conservancy District, but because we've got the problems with the water, what they've been doing is joining those two meetings. So I've been going to those meetings. And so I have this study, and I'm going to talk about this in the newsletter that's coming out in a few days. But I have this study here. This, you can go past this, Crystal. What page? I have 11. 11 of the attachment. It's a chart. Keep going. This attached to page 11 of that one. Page 11. That next page. That one.
You want the chart?
That chart. So they are, this is what we have been talking about at the Water Conservancy District meetings. The green is all the water they have allocated right now. The blue shows that is what is in excess, and you can see where the demand is, and we will exceed their allocated plus existing excess water by next year. And its demand is only going up. And so this is what we've been talking about.
This is not Virgin, this is the county, correct?
This is the county Water Conservancy District. And Virgin is included in their calculations. For the allocated water, Virgin is included in the green. So go to, let's see, keep scrolling on page. Planned water supply, yes. So if you could, there we go. So what they have said, and this in some of the, you'll have to read the whole study, but they show that this planned water supply, all what they have that they can develop is maybe 3,000 more acre feet of water, and that's all they have that they can do unless the Lake Powell pipeline comes on, and that's what that is down there, is if the Lake Powell, if. So before they always said when the Lake Powell pipeline, now they're saying if. And we talked about water when I was at the ULCT conference, that the only thing the legislation is really going to focus on this next legislative session is housing, water, and growth. And at the ULCT conference, this one speaker, he's now retired from the state, and he said that what they've never said before is that right now the water situation, they use the word catastrophic and said we're just in survival mode in Utah right now. And so I wanted to let you people know that this is what they said. And I have asked for a recording of this man's speech so that I can play it and prove to everyone that that is what he said. That I am not making this up. Because everybody was pretty well like, okay. And then they pretty well also agreed that when they go to the federal government trying to get the water pipeline, Lake Powell, they'll probably be laughed out of Washington, D.C. So they don't really, even though they're still saying when. They're not ready to say, I think what's going on is they're not going to say it's dead until they get a final refusal from the federal government. And until that point, they have to keep saying when or if, but they're not going to say it's gone until there's a final letter from the federal government saying no. And they haven't got that yet. So what is being discussed at these meetings with the Water Conservancy District is reuse. And Mike Chandler from Ash Creek has, I've talked with him about it, and he's been at these meetings too, that they're going to try to the only way to have, they've got enough water. I don't want to make people think that the water's gone. It's not gone. It is, they have enough for what they have allocated. They've got enough for us to survive. There, it's not that we're suddenly going to wake up one day and have no water. It's just there is no more for more development. And they've already, as they have said, allocated more water than they have for, and I'm assuming that I am interpreting, but I'm just taking this to mean that they think, you know, when people come in with projects, they're like, yeah, we've got water, but maybe 5 of those projects won't happen. And so they've over allocated. I'm thinking of it kind of like the way airlines oversell seats on the airplane, but yet they usually have to do it for everybody. So I'm thinking that's what this over allocation is. But this particular study, I'm going to have a copy of this in the office. So anybody who wants to come and look at the study can come in and look at the study. And lost my train of thought. It happens. If it comes back, I will come back to this about the water. But even though it's scary, as I said, they have not said this is, they've got water for us. We're fine. It's just no more development. Unless they come up with additional sources of water, which is what they're working on, which the reuse, that's what it was, the reuse. So the reuse that I know, I was at a meeting in Cedar City a couple of weeks ago, and there were 10 of us in the room. There were just 10 people, one of them was the governor and the lieutenant governor, and we were talking about water. And they're going to be doing a trip to Israel sometime this next year to go see how Israel does their reuse, because that's how they're surviving. And so they want to go see what Israel does, and that will be next year, and that's the plan that they're going to be working on that. So, Debbie Downer here to everyone. So that's all my council comments. Anybody else have any comments before we move on with the rest of the meeting?
Mayor brought it to my attention tonight, received a complaint from a debris project up in mud all over the roads down there. I'll reach out to him in the morning and have his crew down there to clean that up. They had a broken water line up on the east end of town. As they're doing the road construction, laying the guardrail, they drive those down 6 feet and they punch through the 8-inch line, so that got repaired yesterday. For anybody up there that's noticing their water has a metallic taste. And the last thing I got, long-term resident here, long-time resident, Lenny Brinkerhoff. Lenny Brinkerhoff was mayor here in this town. Her husband passed away this last week. There's a funeral down at the Birkin Steak Center on Saturday, and it'd be nice if people could show up and show their support. They did a lot for this town. So I think it's at 9:30 is the viewing, and 11 if I remember right is the viewing.
I think it's 10,
Is it 10 for the viewing?
and the viewing is 12.
And this is on Saturday?
Well, then you'll be happy to tell that.
That's better.
What's that?
What did you say?
The church at the bottom of the hill.
American State Center, okay, American.
And then he'll be buried here in Virgins. That's all I got.
Anybody else? Leroy, Misty, Paul.
I was just gonna say that Raymond grew up here, so did his wife, so. I think they were childhood sweethearts. But think about people that grew up here, stayed here. Raised their families here, in fact, they have some children.
So, council comments?
Yes.
Since we have completed, this is a question for both chiefs. Since we now have the website up and running, are we gonna catch up, and who's responsible for doing amendments to Woodland to get them up to date and for municipal costs? So those are the questions we got
I think it's
planned.
kind of the same thing. That's me.
You do both brutal and municipal code?
Well, it's all.
That is the same thing.
It's municipal code, so.
Well, no, brutal is different because we amended the municipal code on Sullivan.
So you're talking, I see what you're saying. We're talking about, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, you're right, I understand.
Yeah,
So
so
I think it's very use. But we haven't ever codified the municipal code. It needs to be added at some point, but. That'd
And-
probably be something for Unicode to actually.
Yes, and I was just, speaking with the people from the Unicode people, just yesterday and today. And I have some more stuff I'll report later.
I'm trying to read behind on stuff on.
No ways. I will note, real quick, that Unicode is very robust. I think there's 30-something books that you can put your cemetery sexton information in, and tons of books.
It's meant to be a one-stop
For everything.
for everything.
You can put your town standards for streets. I mean, they've got tons of books. Just has to be put in, which
Yeah,
is.
they've got a book set up, they've got this book set up on the paper, the land use is the one that opens right now.
And I'm glad you mentioned the website, because Crystal and I just had a webinar with them this morning. And the contract we signed with them, our website is what I would call basic cable out of all the services that they offer. Because the price, because we signed a contract for 3,000, where you could, neighboring towns are paying 25 for the same company, for their web design. And there is the same company. Anyway, they just told us that next year we will be upgraded to what I would call premium cable. And we're gonna get all the features of the other towns for the same price as what we're paying now. Yes, it's gonna be a really slick website when it gets upgraded next year. It's gonna be really nice. It's nice now, but it's gonna be really nice next year.
Can I add to your real, the ordinances are not real far behind, but getting the documentation, you have to have a scanned copy of the ordinance attached as well. So I've updated a lot of the ordinances, but I haven't got all of the attached copies to put in. So
That's a nice,
behind.
that's a nice feature. I think I saw that because you changed the code language to match what was changed. But then at the bottom, you have the ordinance, and then you can put that on. And I like that feature. That's a good feature.
It's a little bit time consuming. You have to link everything, but it's, I'll get it kind of, I'll have it done by the end of the year.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then what brought that up was because we did the salary ordinance, we amended the municipal code. We need to start amending that. And we talked earlier today about, when we're talking about code enforcement, you were talking about dogs. Well, we don't have a dog ordinance anymore. Or maybe we do, and it's just not on the municipal code.
Municipal code sits in a book. There's no online
See.
version of that, so.
So we haven't added it to the online version, which we should get
Yeah,
online.
we don't have the online code for municipal code. It's not, they never.
Actually, our municipal, Unicode is one of our underused assets that we have, that we use, we don't use it enough.
Yeah, it's
They have they can help us write our ordinances and the whole program is actually.
Yeah, I know. I was about to say, taking away.
Oh, it's, I mean, it's just, it'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
What it can do with the commission.
But no, I understand that. It's just that we have code provisions that are
Yeah,
online now,
we need to put it.
and we need to.
Two
Update
books,
it,
we'll
yeah.
do, but we'll have to hire Unicode to put the municipal code on, because it's not.
We just started with the land use ordinances.
Okay. Cool. Consent agenda. We have approval of minutes from August 24th meeting and the September 28th town council meetings, and approval of the checks and invoices for September. I already went through the minutes. Last month, we did not approve the minutes from August 24th. We wanted more time to review them. I've given Monica all my changes for the August, and I've already reviewed the September and sent her all my changes. And she's put them in already. So whatever you guys reviewed for the meeting today is with all my changes on it already.
I would ask that we just hold this September 24th and move that to next month for approval. I just missed it when I was going through the file.
You only looked at the August minutes.
Yeah, the August minutes I'm fine with, but, September ones, I didn't even see them until I saw the agenda just now.
Okay.
Didn't realize that they were all posted.
Okay,
So that's my bad. We could just pull up and I'll get it done for next month.
any objection? Okay, so I will take a motion for the consent agenda and I will let Paul make the motion since he has.
So I move approval of the consent agenda minus the September 28th, 2022 town council meeting and direct, I think that there's any report there, signatures, so just approval of the consent agenda except for September 28th, 2022 town council meetings, which will be next month's meeting.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Open forum, if anyone has any, anything to say before we get on to the rest of the meeting. Oh, I thought for sure we were gonna get it. Just,
About Sean Evans.
yeah, I don't think it's on. Just push it on by.
Pull the back button.
Yeah.
It's on.
Now we're good. Okay, Sean Allen, just wanted to mention about the lighting and I wasn't sure if that had all totally been decided. I hope the light out from my house will be like the last one changed ever. Because I have been in the industry, I have been looking at those lights. And according to the lighting ordinance that we want to write, they actually, the color of most of those, if they're not a low enough Kelvin temperature, will not match the lighting ordinance that we want to work with. So it's interesting, they want us to change over to LED, but I don't agree with the color temperature. And that's a lot of the problem why they're so glaring and bright is because the color temperature is too high. So if we can get them to install the lowest color temperature possible, that'd be good, but I'm really comfortable with these lights and hope that they don't get changed for a long time. Thanks.
Okay, I will ask, I will call the lady at Rocky Mountain Power now.
Awesome.
Just, Ken Peterson. Just a ditto on what Sean said, color is so critical. And I've seen it both ways, in Tuckerville and here, so appreciate it if you would double check that.
Okay.
April McKeon. Couple of things. I reviewed this study that you have on the board, and one thing that people might want to take a look at it, besides just the fact that our water situation is critical. They also talk about the impact fees and water rights prices going up. Or not water right, but the cost of water for residents and businesses going up, so that might be something people would be interested in. And I also wonder, did they take into account any kind of conservation in the study? I didn't see any place that they talked about potential conservation, if that's included in the, the demand or how they figured that. It didn't say specifically.
They just talked about what their goal is, that right now people, right now they're at 0.89 acre foot per home and they want to go to 0.59.
Is that what they use for the projected?
We would have to look and go and
I couldn't tell in that. The other thing is, I might be getting ahead of myself because it's on later on the agenda, but that water transportation agreement, I read through that and I didn't see anywhere that they talked about the estimated ERC that would be contained in the agreement. And also on page exhibit A, page 6 was blank, which was supposed to show the location of where this water transportation agreement would be taking place. Was I the only one that had a blank page on that?
no, mine was blank too.
Okay,
It was just gonna be a description of that.
So I know they're going to suggest an 8-inch, it's basically an 8-inch main water line and distributed among, I don't even, it didn't really even say how many users.
It's going up to, by under canvas. It's that, it's going
It is
into
for
canvas.
under canvas then, is that?
It's not
basically-
for under canvas, but it is going up near there.
Oh,
So it's going up into the county. If the water is just passing through Virgin and going up Coolock Terrace Road to something that's in the county.
Right.
We have nothing, it's nothing to do with us. They're just using our pipes to get water.
ERCs will be not affect us at all.
oh, so it's not based on our usage at all, it's,
Just to
okay.
use our
Okay.
infrastructure.
It wasn't really clear, I didn't, well, maybe I misread it or didn't understand, so. Okay, so the other thing is the Steve Woodbury project. So I was wondering, has the conditional use permit application for the lodging units been submitted to replace the one that was withdrawn?
Not that I'm aware
Okay, so if, so they are going to submit something, correct?
Depends on what the commission comes up with on what they're building. They're working on that,
of. What commission?
planning and zoning commission.
So we don't know if it's going to be lodging units or.
Well, the question is, and Cameron can probably speak better here than I can, but well, I can speak better here, but our definitions are a bit of a mess on different kinds of lodging units. So they're working on that to clarify what's what. And then from there, if it's determined that what they're building requires a CUP, then we CUP.
So no CUP. But you better go to all the meetings from planning.
Sounds like it, so.
Is that included in the definitions we're going to deal with next month?
I
No,
don't think they've got.
Separate.
Different?
different.
Well, so we don't know what they're putting there, but I would suggest that. Because almost anything they build there has some impact on the residents of Desert Garden Estates. And the fact that the road access right away doesn't meet Virgin County design and construction standards. I would suggest that be considered a level 2 CUP so that public can have input on. Whatever's going there when we find out what it is. And the other question I have, is it legal for the permittee to continue construction on that section of the project without a CUP permit?
Are you talking about the building of lodging units?
No, I'm just talking about the work in general.
And all they're doing is infrastructure work at this point.
They're not doing any building, it's just ground stuff that's going in.
Water lines. and the rest.
But they haven't started a build, they don't have a building permit to start building, like the building or put in the pumps or anything like that. All they have right now is a permit that allows them to lay the water pipes and things.
So that groundwater permit includes that,
Groundwork.
that parcel.
Okay. Next issue. Decision on the appeal, John Hewlett's appeal. So when we had the special meeting a couple weeks ago, he read the draft of the letter with our decision, correct? Heath?
Yeah.
Yes. And the purpose tonight is just for us to vote on this, because we did not vote. We didn't vote in the closed meeting because you can't, and nor did we vote on it at the last meeting because we didn't have the written copy for us to look at. So. Okay. So what we said at the last meeting was that the decision that we felt that the appeal was late pursuant to the two dates that, he laid out in the letter. But that we would compromise by working with the people in Desert Gardens with your, concerns regarding Route 3 and especially with the road. And what can we do to try to minimize the impact? And so that is ultimately what we decided. Did everyone agree that that was our decision, or have I misrepresented anything? Or do you have anything you want to add? What I've said? You feel, okay, you guys feel like I've accurately represented just what we
Yeah,
decided?
and
Yes,
it's in the council's SharePoint file.
yes.
Documents.
Yeah, we have it in our file here.
Ratifying vote to authorize use of the chair issuance to the at this point in time.
Yes, I just wanted to be sure that I had correctly represented what our decision was. So if I have adequately represented the decision, then at this point, as he said, the only vote is to ratify the. Hold on,
Memorandum decision.
I wanted to get to see exactly what you call it, there we go. That we ratify the memorandum decision and authorize my signature. And then distribute and give a copy to the appellant, which he's already gotten a copy of the rough draft that we had. So I guess I will take a motion to ratify this memorandum decision, authorize me to sign it and give a copy to Jeff. From someone.
I'll move that we ratify the memorandum as dated the 18th day of October 2022 regarding the John's appeal.
That's all it's needed. You need a motion.
Motion needs to be seconded and voted on.
Right, but I wasn't sure if you could say it.
Oh, yeah.
I'll second.
Roll call or just all eyes?
You need your roll call,
Because one,
because I have to abstain. So you need.
that is correct, I forgot you need to abstain. Oh,
Before I give my roll call, John, the ordinance, it's clear that the appeal must be within 15 days of the determination. The determination that the ordinance was speaking to was the planning and zoning determination. And I looked at your appeal again, over and over again, to look at your argument. And I think your argument fits better on some different enforcement provisions related found under 16.14. But since the code is an ordinance and by law, I am bound to follow that ordinance until it's changed, I have to go with that it was untimely, so my vote is mine.
is what?
Aye.
Well, he made it easy because he said everything, so I.
My vote also is aye, and it is because we agreed to work with the people of Desert Gardens and see what we can do to minimize the impact. But it's like Paul said, the law is what the law is, and I can't just say no, because the law is what it is. And if it said, if it laid out the dates, we have to comply with what the dates are. Even That's what it is. The law's the law. So that's why my vote is like,
And my vote is aye for the same reason, to follow the law.
Mayor, I would suggest that at some point in the future, we have either a special meeting or a separate agenda item so we can start working on these solutions.
I have no objection to that. I think that's a good idea. Hold on, John.
Oh, and I abstained for the roll call vote. I'm abstaining from the vote. Because I was the chair at the time.
Okay, all right, John. I will let you speak.
Thank you.
No, but I was letting everybody speak after, I won't go for very long. Okay,
Communication on this issue is extremely important. I do not think that we are getting through to one another. If you recall, many of these issues that I brought up in the appeal came to an appeal because when I addressed both council and planning and zoning with these issues, nothing became of it. I also want to state, because you're stating fact, you're stating law, the ordinance that you're talking about, 16.04.G.7, refers to appealing the decision or determination made by the consulting department. Planning and zoning decision, I made clear during the hearing, was not being appealed. I made clear during the hearing that our zoning administrator, on the day that the CUPs were issued, checked the box on the application stating that all requirements had been met. In my appeal, I pointed out several, if not all, of the requirements that our planning and zoning department said would be necessary in order to receive the CUP for an automobile service station. Some of those were operational requirements. Some are construction requirements, i.e. the sound wall. Some requirements had to be achieved prior to receiving the CUPs. The CUP. They were not acquired, they were not accomplished, they were not met. I want to interject this to myself and to you. I've indicated, as you have indicated, that we can work these issues out. But we can't work out anything until this town acknowledges the many, and virtually a truckload of state, county, and local regulations that are not being met. Yes, you talked about the widening 1420 West. Not a word, not one word has been mentioned about the DEQ letter and several other important documents that must be achieved. Open space requirements. They can't even do building plans until open space has been confirmed. And there's conflicts with DEQ's letter and site plan and how bonuses are being calculated.
Okay, these are things we can talk about when we have our meeting. That Paul wants us to have a meeting, we'll talk about.
I'd like to finish and make a
Okay.
couple more statements.
All right.
okay? And I'm gonna read the part of this too. I need to underline, I did not appeal a zoning and planning and zoning decision. In my prepared statement, I say the appeal authority has not officially acknowledged any of the state, county, local regulations, state, county, and or local regulations that were addressed during the appeal hearing and do not comply with regulations. For the record, the memorandum decision, paragraph 2 states the permittee application for the automobile service station also requested a CUP for lodging for dwelling units. This is not correct. Look at the application. Let's don't start throwing out false information to part of this mess that we have already.
Okay, how long do you have? Because you're already at 3 minutes.
I have just a couple more paragraphs.
Okay,
For the record, the town attorney and or the zoning administrator must provide documented evidence that a level 1 CUP for Labrie Virgin Commercial Limited has been applied for and or issued. I thought we had settled that during the hearing, and yet within the memorandum, level 1 is brought up once again. And I'm going to interject here too, April's comment. I wonder if it still be considered a level 1 after this town has to spend many thousands of dollars to enlarge 1420 West. And by the way, there was a meeting with the fire department, and yes, Labrie spoke with them, and the fire department said, in order to have the dwelling units, they had to have 2 accesses. If it's going to be the town's money to enlarge 1420 West so that this developer can have his dwelling units, it's got to be a level 4. I think it's only fair that you provide documents that back up your claim that there was even an application for a level 1. Let's clean up that matter. Also, just for the record, Exhibit A, which is a retyped version of the legal description of the 2 lots involved, okay, includes extra wording. One identifying the service station, one identifying dwelling units. I did not edit it to make sure that it was correct, otherwise, but I do suspect that they have. It's showing that the gas station is on 3.88 acres, and the dwelling units, restaurant, and retail shop were on 2-point-something acres. That may be reversed. But acknowledge the issues that were brought up so that we can address them and bring them to a head.
okay. Thank you. Thank you, John. Okay, the next issue on the agenda was, is discussion and possible approval of resolution 10, which is appointments to the capital improvements committee. And, so the policy that we enacted back in July says that the mayor and the town treasurer are already on the committee. And then 1 person from planning commission and 2 town council members. I talked with Wyatt on the planning commission and he agreed to serve on the committee. And so for the two townspeople, I had proposed April, and April said last time she was here that she was willing to serve. And there was a fifth person who I had an idea to put on, but I haven't talked to him. He's hunting. He's supposed to be back today, and so I will talk to him this weekend. So I figured I could get him, if assuming he's agreeable, that we could just do a second resolution next month to add him to the committee. But once we approve this, we could at least, we'll have a quorum, and we could at least go ahead and have a first meeting maybe next month with this committee. So any objection to Wyatt being the planning commission representative and April from the town at this point in time? Everybody okay with that? Okay. So I know Paul told me he wanted to make an amendment to this resolution.
That's, since the two taxpayer citizen members of the committee are for 2-year terms, but the initial term, you have one for 2 years and one for 3 years.
You're talking about the two townspeople?
The two townspeople. And since we don't have the second townsperson, when we pass the resolution, I would request an amendment that April be added to the 3-year initial term. And then the next person would be the 2-year term for the nominee.
So that would make her through December 2025, instead of where I put this, she would, the following 4 would serve through. Okay, I need to
To be
change that.
2026.
Thanks.
You want
That'd be
to
25. 2025.
Okay, I will let you. Yes, 2025. I will let you make a motion.
Okay, well, I will move approval of resolution 2022-N with the following amendment that April McKeon be appointed to the initial 3-year term through December 2025.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next item. Discussion and possible approval of letter of support for paving of Sheep Bridge Road. And I have a letter here from Jim Backus that I will read into the record. I had a letter from last month when we talked about this. And I forgot to read it into the record last time. I was going to read it today, but I've been unable to find it. And it was someone else in Desert Gardens. But anyway, here is Jim Backus's letter regarding the paving of Sheep Bridge Road. Says, "Hi Crystal, I would appreciate it if you would enter this letter in the town record regarding the paving of Sheep Bridge Road. My name is Jim Backus. I live in Desert Garden Estates and am an abutter to Sheep Bridge Road. I would like to officially state that I am against the paving project. My reason for opposing the paving is due to speeding traffic. The current speed limit is 25 miles per hour, and it is completely ignored by motorists. My wife and I often walk along the road and occasionally bicycle along it. The speeding cars make it very dangerous. There have been several occasions when we have witnessed cars lose control and go off the road. In one instance, the car went into a wash and had to be towed out. This is a serious problem that mostly goes unseen by the majority of people in town. In the event that it is inevitable, I strongly urge the mayor to request some sort of speed control, speed bumps or humps, and as well as sidewalks. At a minimum, these are needed along the stretch from Highway 9 to Falls Park. Additionally, if it is paved, I request that there be no streetlights along this stretch of the road. Thank you for your consideration." So I did speak with Pam, the mayor of, Rockville. And she said that, you know, they went and met with the commissioners and talked to them about their situation and what they want in Rockville for the paving of the road from Smithsonian View is they're requesting that there be a new bridge built in Rockville. And they spoke with, when they met with the commissioners, they said that they will write a letter of support, that there is a condition. And their condition is that this bridge will be built before they pave the road. Because otherwise they'll just drag it out and it's gonna tear up that historic bridge that's only a one-way bridge and would not work. And so their condition is that the bridge be built before their road is paved. And so I wondered, again, when we talked about this last month, I wondered if there was anything. Oh, she also said that they said, the county commissioner said that they would maintain the road all the way through Rockville. It's not just gonna stop at the border of Rockville and the county, that they would maintain it all the way to Highway 9. So I would expect that we should get the same consideration if we do a letter of support, that they would maintain the road all the way up to Highway 9. And so we have not yet met with the commissioners, but I asked you guys if you guys had any thoughts on any conditions we might want. And Paul, I think you had mentioned maybe a roundabout and Highway 9 there, Sheepridge Road, maybe.
Yeah, Sheep Ridge Road and SR 9 around the power trees of those some type. And then there was a very good letter submitted by April that listed a number of other items that pertain to.
Do you have it? You want to read it?
Well, I don't have the letter, but I have the conditions that she requested. And what she suggested is traffic calming measures such as speed bumps or speed humps at different intervals along Sheepridge Road. A trail to accommodate bicycle and pedestrian traffic, preferably. My view would be preferably a bike lane and a separate pedestrian path. Vehicle restriction for large trucks based upon either axles or weight.
Read that again.
Vehicle restrictions for large trucks, the restrictions based upon either axles or weight along the entire road. Landscaping appropriate to protect residents from increased traffic and to create a scenic byway for travelers. And then storm drain piping system installed to replace wash on the west side of the roadway to prevent erosion in the newly paved section and safety of traveling public. That was what she requested as conditions. They all seem reasonable and tied to the road. So I like those conditions.
Landscaping, you talking the entire length?
I know this along Desert Gardens area.
Basically, like Backus said here in his letter from Falls Park to Highway 9. That would be.
And then the question I have, because one of the rumors is that the grant would not cover urgent section of Sheepridge Road, so we want to ensure that the grant covers the complete paving of the road, if that was going to be the case.
So,
And I guess you can ask April if I got all the conditions right, but I think that's what I gathered from the letter.
so April, did he get all of your suggestions?
I think you covered it, yes. If you understand about the wash, there's a large wash on the left side of the Sheepridge currently. And as Jim indicated, sometimes cars end up in that spot, and so we put it as regular storm drain pipe. Eliminate the wash, have them landscape in front of the residents there, you know, and that would provide a nice scenic you, the traveling public, and protect the residents.
Okay, here's my suggestion, on this item on the agenda. When I talked with Pam, she said, Pam, the mayor of Rockville, she said that, during the meeting that she had with the commissioners, that they had said they would call and call us to make an appointment to meet with us, which we haven't done. And so I think maybe the better course of action at this point is to continue this to next month. In the meantime, we have a meeting with the commissioners, lay out all these conditions and see what the response is. See what we get. What do you guys think?
I agree with that, and I think we should take April's letter and use that. I like the bike lanes, because you got a lot of mountain bikers that use that area. They need the bike lanes.
Okay.
And I don't know if we need that sidewalk.
Well, which is what this Backus was asking for. Okay, then I would say, continue this to next month and we'll go talk to, Gene and I can go talk to commissioners and, about the, conditions and what can we get out of them.
I think that the bike trails is a must.
Okay.
Any of us that use that road to travel back and forth on, the bike traffic is heavy. I think when you're doing that, you could make that especially be a strong point at Falls Park. Because that turn right there is dangerous. To go in, it's just a single lane road.
So how far are you thinking the bike lane should go?
The most of the traffic is heavy toward Hurricane, but I mean toward more toward Hurricane Twist. But it trickles our way to the gem trail right there.
You got the little restaurant thing out there, probably, I would say,
Yeah.
east from there.
That's what I was thinking, that bike, that thing they have out there too, yeah, and with
But-
all those trails.
But individuals on bikes are gonna enter from both ways.
Yeah, they come from all over out there. There's these-
You need a bike lane the whole lane, especially for mountain or for road.
Because that, a lot of people. The other thing to consider, I wonder about the bridge there. If it should be, inspected to ensure that it can handle the increased traffic.
What did you want to say, Darlene?
I wanted to underscore that the bike lane is still the whole route because people, they cross. There's trails that cross that third road, closer to 59.
Yeah.
There's places where they ride right over to continue it. Maybe some crossing stuff. So there's a.
Okay. All right, so, yes, Karen.
So I know the status.
If we're gonna talk, I need to go to the Microsoft state, I mean.
District on me. Do you know the status of,
It's working.
It doesn't sound like it.
I'm
Okay, Kent Peterson,
Ken Peterson, that's right.
thank you.
Do you know the status of, the road as far as ATVs are concerned? Many roads, or most roads are, depending on who's owning them, county or federal or city, have rules, laws, and ordinances as to where different vehicles can travel and not travel. So SUVs have areas where they can go off and do their thing. There are even what's the word for scenic byways that are designated for SUVs. And I think it's important because this is huge, that's coming to our county and has been invited to our county. And SUVs will play a big part in what happens out there if they're allowed.
So you're talking about just off road.
off-road, nowadays they're not off-road. Nowadays, they're licensed on-road, we've seen that, we all know that. And it's going to get worse.
Okay, but if we're paving Sheep Ridge Road, what is your concern about the ATVs?
Well, my concern is for how it affects the gardens, how it affects the traffic coming to whatever you have in the way of a roundabout or whatever, if it comes off from Sheep Ridge onto SR9. They're going, I don't know what the rules are out here as far as SUVs are allowed, here, where they're not, I've seen them, we've all seen them.
So you want to know what the rules are right now?
Yeah, you know what they are,
No, I don't.
but I think
asking-
in response to what we want to do with regards to saying to the county, what we need as a city, we need to get ahead of that and say, and have somebody with the knowledge of what comes about from all of those hundreds of people that come from all over the west to ride their SUVs and do whatever they want to do. Is that road going to be open to that, or is it not going to be open to that? And
I want to just make sure I'm understanding, you're talking ATVs, not SUVs, right? You're talking like the razors and the all-terrain vehicles that are like open, or are you talking four-wheel drive vehicles? That have been closed.
Well, SUVs are
That's a
just,
street.
anything that is currently approved or not approved by county and federal ordinances and laws and rules and designations. So I would just say whatever kind of traffic that's going to attract, we know it's going to attract skin trail riders and hikers and all that goes on with the space and the beauty that's out there. And the desire to be out there and the camping to be out there. We're as a county, we are becoming a mecca, in my opinion, for razors and all those different types of things. They're having rendezvous.
right, but what I'm asking is, are you talking about off-road or on Sheep Ridge?
I'm not educated enough to tell you.
Oh, okay,
I'm telling you both.
okay,
I'm telling you that we need to know what all of everything that might be using that or shouldn't be using that. As a city, we need to say, I have all kinds of fears about opening Sheep Ridge to Highway 59, is that what it is? 59? I have all kinds of fears of it and what it would mean to people who live along Sheep Ridge in our town.
okay.
We need a motion.
Yes, I need a motion.
Make a motion to move item A in new business. Regarding the letter for the support and possible support of David Sheep Ridge Road until the November meeting.
I will second. All in favor? Okay, item B. Discussion and approval of the revised water transportation agreement with the Washington County Water Conservancy District. So have you guys had a chance to look at the two agreements that he has sent over with the small changes that were made?
If I could just.
Yes, go ahead, sure.
So, the previous council had approved this, transportation, agreement is a document, it's a pretty standard document Washington County Water Conservancy District uses, but there's ever times when they need to, what I will use the term wheel water through another municipality's system, meaning that it doesn't make sense either from an easement or from an economic standpoint to try to put some sort of parallel water line right down through the middle of a municipality who's got their own water lines there. Oftentimes what they'll do is the conservancy district is connected to every municipality's water system. And so what they oftentimes ask for is the ability or the right, contractual right, transport water through our system to a point on the other end of our system where they will pick it back up again in the county and move it and use it. And this agreement is, they would like to be able to transport water through the town system to a point where they will pick it up on Co-op Terrace Road and take it up the road. They've had requests from property owners, I am told, I don't know which ones, and I don't believe it is under campus.
No, it's not under Canvas, they're by under.
But that they will contribute or participate with the district to build, to pay for the installation of that line if they'll run it. And the district said, hey, yeah, if we can not have to run our own independent line, we can just wheel it or transport our water through the town system and do that, then we're good. We'd like to do that. And the previous council had approved that. However, it had never been signed and delivered to the district. And then we had elections, we had new council members elected, new mayor. And an issue had come up with the issue of Pocketville Road. And in talking with the mayor, I had placed a call to the general manager for the Conservancy District about, and explained to them that at the intersection of Pocketville Road and Co-op Terrace Road is land that is owned by the district, and that the town had been working with residents along Pocketville Road. They had been inquiring of the fire district and looking at several different options, including the option of possibly dead ending Pocketville Road and not making it through a through connection to a Co-op Terrace Road, and had asked them. I asked the general manager if he would be willing to support that, if that's what the town ultimately decided. He said, that's fine. I said, can we put language to that effect in this transport agreement? Because even though this is your standard transport agreement, it does have to do this new line that you're going to put in and connect right there where this is you know, the city is analyzing and studying it. And he said, sure, no problem. So I put language in there. And then I got contacted by the district's general counsel, not the general manager, the exact from it's their legal counsel, and said, hey, I've looked at Zach forwarded me your revisions to the agreement, and notwithstanding what Zach told you, based on my recommendation to the district and its board, I don't like that we put this type of language buried into one of our standard water transport. The district is fine, it says that we'll cooperate with you if the town wants to dead end that road, but we'd just rather put it into a standard memorandum of understanding. So I said, I don't think we have a problem with that. So send me over what you're thinking. So the first that we have on the agenda is basically putting this water transportation agreement back to its original form, essentially the updating dates, putting in the current mayor and all that good stuff. And then you can see they have subtracted out language that I had added, and she has come up with this memorandum of understanding and added a little bit of and the black part is what she cut out. It's my language cut out of the water transport agreement into a memorandum of understanding. The blue is some additional terms that she's added in there, which I don't have a problem with. So tonight, I think just to make the district happy, because we've kind of been sitting on this since last fall. I think they want to move forward with getting that line going and in place, but they can't really until they know that they can transport through our system. That's what is on the agenda, both the revised water transportation agreement and then approving and authorizing the mayor to enter into that memorandum of understanding, which essentially, if you read it, it basically does not commit the town to anything, it does commit to dead ending. It just said that if when we, in our discretion as a town, determine what we want to do there, that the district will cooperate. And they will cooperate even if it means that the like a a dead end circle or ability for cars to turn around is located on that property. As long as it doesn't prejudice the existing lines or anything like that.
Is there ambiguity in the current agreement that they would fight that?
No.
No.
We just wanted a commitment from them that they would support us if that's what we wanted to do. And they're saying, yeah, we'll give you that indication of support through this memorandum of understanding.
So what happened is when I talked to them, because of where they were wanting to put the pump that is going to send the water up Coop Terrace Road, I said, well, if we ultimately decide to make that a cul-de-sac, I didn't want their pump to be right where a cul-de-sac.
Right in the middle of the bowl of the cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
So, you know,
And that's why we came up with this. They said, oh, if you wanna, if ultimately that's what the
that's a
person wants to do,
possibility.
well,
that
we're.
We will design that so the pump station is located somewhere outside of where a dead end bowl or cul-de-sac would be.
And so that's why we want this, even though it's not binding us to anything, it's not binding them to anything. It is an agreement that they understand we may want to in the future, and they will keep this in mind.
It only, it's a statement of understanding that they will cooperate.
Yes.
Couldn't we have a memorandum that says the town is asking you to not place it at the end of that street? Without saying, in the event that we close it down?
Oh,
I don't know if I understand the question.
they're
I
not,
don't
they're
like
not.
the idea, I mean, I don't personally like the idea, and there's plenty of people in town that like the idea of this even consider closing that street. What I'm saying is there any reason we couldn't ask the water district and say, look, there may be a potential at some point you want to put a water pump there. We're asking you, as the same thing, memorandum of understanding, you would move your pump station away from Pocketville Road for any improvements we may do there in the future. I know it's grasping at straws, but
Well, yeah, I guess.
this language looks like we are trying to close that road down. Even if that's not the intent, that's the
They
way
haven't read it, but
I most certainly.
they don't read it because it says in the event the town determined.
And it says the town
You
is.
still have to go through the proper process.
And it says the town is considering the feasibility. I mean, the whole thing requires.
Feasibility of it.
Yeah.
And part of what we have to look at is things like fire protection. We need to know, I've always said fire district, I want fire districts in, but if they have a huge issue about that road being dead end from a fire protection standpoint. We need to listen to it because they're the fire protection purveyors here in town, and we really can do something that. They said, because I know what Chief Coolman will say, he'll say, yeah, we'll agree to it if you'll accept. In a contract, all liability if the house burns down over there because you get into that road and I don't like it.
In which case
That's
we
his
wouldn't be able
favorite
to
thing
do
to
it,
do.
so we don't know. It's just, all it's saying, Gene, is that they have no objection. And they will work with us if that is what we do. This is not binding us to anything
Oh, yeah.
other than their cooperation, if that is ultimately where things go. And then, you know, the Rocky Mountain Power wants to buy some of their land, to put their substation up there. And so what I'm trying to do is to work out something where we can all design something. They can keep this in mind as they figure out what property from the Water Conservancy District, the Rocky Mountain Power wants to buy, where they would put their substation, where Rocky Mountain Power would put, Water Conservancy District would put their pump station in such a way that if this comes to pass, which is a big if, that it can all work together and everybody can get what they want. And that's all this is trying to do.
I understand, and I'm not trying to be a stickler mud, but it states pretty clearly, the town is considering the feasibility. in
Yes.
terms of terminating the road.
The
And as far as I know, we haven't had any of that discussion. I'm not willing to vote yes on this memorandum at this time. Doesn't mean I won't in the future, but I think there's a lot of discussion that I'd rather have before I'm willing to vote to pass this memorandum. That's just my opinion.
Okay, my opinion is that we should sign it because it's not binding us to anything, it's not binding the Water Conservancy District to anything. And all they're saying is, we understand you're thinking about the feasibility, and that's it. It's. We'll cooperate if you need us to, that's all it says. And, no, none of this has come before the town to discuss because we're still working with the, residents of Pocketville Road of what they would like to see. And we know from the one meeting that I had with them that the cul-de-sac is their preferred option, but we still have to sit down and go through with all of the different suggestions they have and see, prioritize and see what's what. But given that they want this transportation agreement, they want to build a substation, I just want to make sure that if they their pump station, I just want to make sure that they are aware before they build their pump station and locate it, that they need to take into consideration what version they want to be doing. That's all I'm asking them to do.
Understand.
My understanding is that the district has to, once their plans are moving forward is to design the water line extension and give the engineers estimate of cost, and then contractually go to the landowners who would benefit and for a written participation agreement. And once that's in place, they will have the design of the water line extension and a contractual commitment. Then they're going to actually, they would go forward and putting it out for bid, have the work done. I think that the only thing that I would say here is that this would be, the district would be hard pressed to come up with a design that put a pump station right where we had, when they've signed a memorandum of understanding like this, saying that we're considering that ending, why would they design putting a pump station right in the middle of
Where we might want it.
and that's my only thinking of the benefit to that. I completely understand.
You see where I'm coming
Yeah,
from?
it does. It talks about there's been some contemplation. There really has not been. There's been some mayor communication with residents and stuff like that. But as a council, there hasn't been any formal action taken. This is definitely from this town side a very preliminary thing. But we just felt like from a planning standpoint, maybe there was some benefit to not having, because Gene, here's the thing, what if they do put the pump station right there? I mean, you even look at like the language that the district's general counsel added. Parties agree that any arrangements agreed upon for the assembly meeting must not interfere with the district's use of the property, including not limited to the district's divestment of property or the construction operation of the district facility. If they go ahead and put a pump station right where we want to dead end the road, they're gonna say, yeah, we signed a memorandum of understanding with you, but you're gonna have to move it outside. But that's what I would say, that you knew that's what we were planning on doing, and you designed it smack dab in the middle. We shouldn't have to pay for the cost of moving the pump station. That'd be a significant expense, which would almost dead end that option of the town to.
Yeah, it would totally.
Because it's gonna cost $400,000 to move the pump station. Relocate the pump station over, then I don't know financially, that's something that if the town would pretty much say. I don't think we can afford that end right there.
So I guess my question is, why can't this just simply say, we don't want you to put the pump station there and you agree not to put it there, without including language
Maybe
that
we
says
can.
we're considering closing the
Maybe
street?
this is,
This to me is putting the cart ahead of the horse with the street portion, but I get the idea of trying to get ahead of the planning on the other. I'm not trying to be a stick in the mud. I'm putting my name and my vote behind something that says we're looking at closing that street, and I have not heard or seen anything to do with that. I'm not willing to vote.
so like I said, the black is my language as I try to put it into a weird place in a water transport agreement. And so all she has done is gone and taken it out of there and just copy and pasted it, put it there, and then added what you see in the blue.
Parcels.
I don't think, Dean, to answer your question, this is her first draft. I haven't given her any feedback. I can come back and say, no, we don't want, let's take out this sentence and this phrase that talks about that the city is considering dead ending, if you wanted to say that you will place it somewhere. But we have to be able to define where they'll agree to place their pump station that wouldn't interfere with the cul-de-sac. And I don't know how, not being an engineer or a surveyor and having the ability to go out there and shoot locations, I don't know if I could identify that myself.
So what I will not, but I will strongly object to is what you probably want to do, which is agree to this tonight and put this on, and I want both. I'm not going to agree, if we agree to this one, I don't think we'll ever be able to get this in.
I'm ready to make a motion, but I wasn't sure if you're going to take public comment first.
I will, but I did have one thing I wanted to point out. On page 2 of the agreement, number 6. I think this was one change from the previous agreement. Where it says ownership of the proposed pipeline. I think we changed that. if
There
we-
was another issue that I wanted to.
Yeah, you wanted to change.
I did not like. We talked about that if we ever annex that area of the county and bring it into the town, that we would have to negotiate to buy that water line. Back from Jersey. I didn't like that because my point was, look, you're gonna have property owners pay for that where it's no money out of the district's pocket. And all we do is annex and bring it into the city and we make it this extension part of our system where we have to perpetually maintain going forward. Then why would we pay you for that? It didn't cost you anything. And so I modified that language in that. So that is one change from the version that the council approved. County council approved.
So in that line would become town properties, which you're saying it would.
Yeah.
it would
Yes,
be-
where it says it would become, is conveyed to the town at no cost before they wanted us to buy it from them. It's like, yeah, no. So we changed, Heath said, no, we're gonna do that.
It was language that essentially said that we would negotiate it, and I'm like, well, what's their negotiating? It's free. And, so that's.
Yeah, because what my understanding is that the pipeline is actually gonna be paid for by the property owners up the road, and it's not gonna cost the district a 1 cent.
And that is the
Yeah,
way.
that's right.
Operates. If they want an extension of the water line
You gotta pay for it.
for the benefit of certain property owners, the district will usually say, sure, we'll do it, you pay for it. And they have never not gotten the exact details if they're getting 100% of it or this is paying a portion of it, but I know that it's being done at the request of property owners out in the county. Of which I have some thought that some of it may be the county themselves bringing out, I don't know how far that water line will go.
I want to talk before you make your motion. I just want to find out how hard is it going to be to just have a language rewritten to say exactly what I'm saying, where we don't want your pump here. But we're not talking about closing the road until we've actually talked about closing the road. Would you be willing to let Heath take and rewrite this to say?
Yes,
we
I
don't want your pump
probably,
station here, and then when we have a chance to actually talk as a town about the possibilities of that. That won't have anything to do with the water transportation. They would agree to move their pump station, that's our request. But then if we decide to close the road, it has nothing to do with them because they've already agreed.
We're not asking them to cooperate with the road, it's only cooperate.
with the location of the pump.
And identify a location. In that area X of the property. This is different than I understand.
It's a different memorandum. I agree. I understand what you're coming from, where you're coming from, but I would want them to take note, be on notice. That this is something that the residents of Pocketville Road are interested in. And I just want them to know that. where you're saying,
Paul's gonna make a motion, so we vote.
okay,
Yeah, let's.
I was wondering if she was gonna take public comment first. before
Yeah,
making a
yeah.
motion, you know?
hold on, Darlene has something she wants to say. Public comment.
So, Darlene, my question is, the pipe that we're piping water from for these other people up the road, is that pipe owned by the town?
Yes. Oh, no.
No.
It,
About the pipe that we're going to share with them, because it says, the town shall allow the district through the town's retail culinary water system. Do we own that?
yes, we do.
Yes, so if that breaks because of increased use, do they help us repair it?
The answer would be no. But.
But
But
if you understand our retail water, culinary retail water agreement with the district. So what we ended up doing years and years ago, trying to think of what year in the nineties. We continue to own our water system, our water infrastructure. And some of our water rights, they sell and operate our water system for us, and they make sure that they set the user rates at a rate sufficient to put reserves to maintain our system. So they are operating our system even though we own it. They're refilling the water through it to our residents. And so, yes, but they can't make a unilateral decision that we're gonna wheel water through that system from our system through you to someplace else. They need this agreement. But I guess I'd ask the question, if the additional use created some problem or there was some failure, then the district would obviously be the one under our retail water agreement with them to fix it. And they should be setting aside reserves and having one.
I would be against it greatly if they, just because I served on the water board for years. If they're using our stuff, and like the last two, the water break here, I didn't see them out here fixing this, and Jean just fixed the one up there. So I'd like to be real clear on that.
We fix a lot of our residential connections. We fix some of the residential connections, but not the main infrastructure, the water mains.
That was the main.
But it was damaged in our constructions, not ours, but it was paid for, rather than it damaged it. We haven't had any.
I just think it's quite.
Yeah,
You're right.
you're right. And I guess in that situation, if a contractor damaged it and they were encroaching. And we had to, I'm sure the district would say the same thing, you paid to fix it. And if they couldn't get it out of the person who made the damage, then.
yeah, but I think what Darlene is just, yes,
I totally get it. I will tell you though, it is essentially a municipal courtesy that almost all of your municipalities have and give to each other. These water transportation agreements are not always necessarily unique just to the conservative district. You see neighboring municipalities doing it with each other, and because it was just about every municipality in the county, they will water at some point through another municipality system. And I get your point. I'm just saying, I'm simply trying to put out that this is a practice.
And how do you monitor?
It would be hard to
Usage,
identify.
because it's just water flowing through pipe, pressures aren't changing. They're gonna move it up to a pump and then pump it up further, so in the town, all it is just water passing through, so how would you define increased use, just number of gallons, or how does that? You know what I mean? If I don't know how you determine if rate is.
If you put meters in and out, and so you can meter how much additional gallons through, how do you identify that the additional gallon was the cause of
That's pretty rough.
deterioration that are happening?
Sorry,
It's a
that's
point.
my waste of time, but I like what you're saying.
It's a point made. I fully understand.
Hi, so, it seems like,
Were you?
she said,
Or did she?
she did, she said it really
yeah,
fast.
it seems like, the thing with this language that we can satisfy both parts of this really easily. We just need to say that it's a potential consideration or it's one consideration that's important to us to be able to preserve the option of closing this road. I do think it's inaccurate and problematic to say this language makes it sound like it's already happening, or makes it sort of sound like something's trying to get railroaded through or something funky like that. And I know that's not the intention. So if we just change it slightly to say, you know, one potential consideration for which we want to be sure we've made, you know, the right arrangements would be a closure or something like, you know, let's just make the language so it doesn't make it seem like we're got a conclusion, but it makes, no, what am I saying? But
I get it.
you got it.
I
Okay.
understand.
What you think?
And I think you got it
I
too.
bet you got those words right there for us.
All right, let's talk there.
Well, if you-
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I'll get real quick. The chair's report said the parties acknowledge that the town may at some point in the future consider the feasibility of it.
Mayor, I move for approval and authorize the mayor to sign the water transportation agreement between the town and the water district and the memorandum of understanding concerning possibility.
Motion to amend the.
Well, you got it.
No, you said it, so then I'll make it.
I second.
Motion to amend the motion. To say the parties acknowledge in the memorandum. The parties acknowledge that the town at some point in the future may consider. That the remaining language is this.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
At some point in the future. May
May
consider.
consider.
So I'll accept that. That'll be part of my motion.
Keith, do you think that'll cause a problem?
They're doing this as a favor to us.
I was the one.
That means everybody's, I think.
We have to second the amendment.
No, I accepted this.
You have seconded his amendment. Okay. Vote.
Aye.
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 Hey,
Holy crime, and everybody's happy. We did something right.
all right. So item C, I think we will be able to dispose of fairly quickly. We discussed this, item C is revision of the Virgin Towns Personnel Manual. We discussed this in the work meeting. And what we decided to do is that we will break this up into sections and take it a section at a time. So next month, I will bring a section of the personnel manual. I'll put it on the agenda for us to look at and we'll take it from there. So that was our resolution on this, on item C, correct? Do you all agree that's what we decided?
Yeah.
All right, so then item D, code enforcement officer. So what I had hoped to do was to have Crystal pull up the sections of Bulu. Can you do that from your computer and show that or no?
Not on this, this is already done.
Okay, then I will just pull up, let's see, I have saved some info here. What I'm pulling up, you will not be able to see on the screen, but I talked about here, as set forth in Bulu, if we look at the different code sections, if I pull up 2.22.
Can we look at it here? Does anybody have access to it?
I do, Misty does, Paul has a computer.
Yeah.
Did it just?
I'm sure you're welcome.
Okay,
Do you want me to move over there so you can see?
There, it's okay.
You won't.
oh, you have it on, you printed it.
Parts of it, so.
Okay, so the first part is, two. The first is the first code section is on. Okay. So we're starting off with code section 2.22. And this is enforcement where it says the virgin, do you have that up, Chris? Misty, 2.22?
Can I just have?
I get it. It's what it was, but I thought that was Chris.
I just want to make sure, Heath, are we okay to, can we alter stuff from the land use ordinances without it passing through the planning commission? So this is just discussion and then it would go to them with recommendations.
Well, we could draft an ordinance and then take it to them for them to look at. Okay. So what I see on code 2.22, where it talks about enforcement. The Virgin Town zoning administrator is authorized as the officer charged with enforcement of this ordinance. I would change Virgin Town zoning administrator to say Virgin Town code enforcement officer. And then where it says it shall be the duty of the zoning administrator to enforce the provisions of this ordinance, it should be the code enforcement officer. It shall be the duty of the code enforcement officer to enforce the provisions of this division of this ordinance. And then this goes on and talks about how people file complaints. And this is the part where these are the kind of complaints, correct, Gene, that are like the dog off the leash and the noise and this and that, where people are filing complaints. This is that chapter that talks about it.
Correct.
And then number 4 says the clerk may consult with the zoning administrator, the mayor, or others to determine blah, blah, blah. We should just say the code enforcement officer. So I'm just looking at for section 2.22, all I was proposing there is to change zoning administrator to code enforcement officer. Because this all has to do with complaints and enforcement of complaints. That's all I have on that.
I think it would be important to distinguish complaints dealing with construction, new construction versus complaints.
Do they talk?
It does not.
As to say, I don't think this section even talks about that kind of stuff.
No, it just says,
other
it just
complaints.
says all violations.
Where are you? What section?
Section B, sorry, the town of Virgin encourages the Supreme Court legitimate grievances regarding any violation of the law or ordinance. It would be good to,
Okay,
at some, I don't know quite where, but at some point we have to kind of distinguish.
yeah,
I guess I could be done at the clerk level.
what? Did you get it?
Did you get it up?
All right. Land use. We're looking at 2.22. Two point two two. So in paragraph A, I was just changing zoning administrator to code enforcement officer. That's my suggestion there. And then section 4. Where it says number 4. Where it says the clerk may consult with the zoning administrator, the mayor, I would just change that to say code enforcement officer. And I think that's it. I think that's it on 222.
I'd say add code enforcement to that, because if it has to do with new construction, then we consult with them.
Put that where?
In
In four?
the clerk may consult with the code enforcement officer, the zoning administrator, the mayor, or others. Since if it's new construction, you're gonna want them to direct to the land use distributor.
Okay,
And
do you have any objection on that? No. So your proposal was that it would be up to the clerk to say, oh, this goes to this one and this one to this one. Okay. All right, so 2.22, I don't see that we have an objection there. Then the next one I put down was 16.20, 1620,
Limited commercial habitation.
number F,
Enforcement.
letter F, under enforcement.
I think on most of these, we could just change zoning administrator to.
And that's why all these I picked out. Yeah, I was trying to be careful. Okay, I was trying to be careful to pick out only the kind of stuff that you and I talked about.
I mean, it's just.
Section F, 16.20, section F.
Yeah, no, that's.
There you go.
So I would just change zoning administrator to code enforcement officer. And then 16.22,
Probably. Here's the definition section of the needs to define.
yes, yeah, I have that. Yeah, so in, where is it here? Yes, you go down to section I, it says general provisions for campgrounds. 16.22, section I. Right there. And then number 3. It already says code enforcement officer, but I just wanted to point out this section, that's all. Okay, all right. Next was 2604. This is standards for temporary use in commercial zone for RVs. And are you at 2604? Number C, enforcement. This, I just wonder if we need to, if
Mayor.
it talks about the mayor, I didn't know if we needed to, modify the section to talk about code enforcement. This is batteries going out. So any objection if should we amend this section to talk about the code enforcement officer? Okay, all right. Okay, so that's 260204. Okay, 2606. Same thing, it's temporary use of RVs in residential zones, so it's the same thing. You go to section about enforcement, section B. So it'd be a similar thing, okay? Then 60.02H, this is the short-term rental ordinance. And right now, this one is a little odd. I have, sorry, I've got the wrong section, hold on. 60.02. I have C, first off, C. 8.
That's the on
Oh, it's not H, it's C8.
C8.
8, the number 8. And then E. 8E. The very last of the sentence talks about the town or local law enforcement. I just didn't know if that. If we should amend this to talk about the code enforcement officer.
Can,
What?
but to me, in the town, if the town.
That's good enough?
If someone calls the sheriff's department. Then we find out about it, or if they call the town, when it's referring to the town, that means all of its officers and employees, so, which would include a code enforcement officer, but.
Yeah,
I think the language there is clear enough that I don't know if we have to add code enforcement officer there.
Okay. And then the same thing, let's see.
because if they call me, I'm just gonna tell them call it.
I thought you said the number.
Oh, yeah. Call the mayor, she knows.
Take care of that. So let's see, that was D, E, and then there was one other place where in section G, that was I. Okay. Goodness, we have G, H, and I. So G3 also talks about town or law enforcement, so you may say we don't need to change anything. Okay, and then So probably, and I think 60.04 is gonna be the same thing, where it talks about town or local law enforcement. Yes, it says that, that's what it says.
Yeah.
So 60.04, so the 260s we can probably leave alone, okay. And then, the definition of zoning administrator in the definitions section, Sean,
212,
the definitions section,
212.
yes. The definition of zoning administrator would need to be changed.
And we need to add.
Yes, and we need to add a definition for code
Can
enforcement.
you go
officer.
down to, I'd like to see what's meant for this.
Okay. I thought I
Come on,
had
I
it
thought you
on
did
here.
this stuff.
I thought I had it on here. There I go. So 212 and zoning administrator, got it up there? There it is.
Yeah, that whole thing needs to be redone.
Is it that one that's going to be changed in the definition? You guys have-
It has to be.
Yeah, but I don't know, yes, it'll be in the section that's coming up, because it was L through Z,
And it's changed.
to say what?
I believe we pick up.
Building inspector. Yeah. In the past, and this was back in Lenny's day, she was the zoning administrator and the building inspector.
Right,
So I
but,
just never updated that to take that out.
yeah, but we also say the local official designated to enforce the regulations.
I think we.
Is it-
I think
we change that.
Find that to say the local official designated by the Virgin Town Council to enforce regulations regarding construction.
Is the Virgin Town zone.
Regards.
New construction.
With regard to planning development.
There you go. Yeah, that's a. I'm glad there's lawyers in this room. No.
Okay, so then I have some other codes. That are not listed here. That I was not sure, where did I find it? We had something on-
Search for zoning administrator and city.
That's, well, I have these other four. And one had to do with outdoor lighting as if it, but I can't find the word. Zoning administrator in here, but I know it's 840 came up for some reason.
Maybe that's something Cameron can do. Instead of playing video games.
We're doing perfectly. on
That,
time.
4.0.
Okay.
Just go through it again.
Yeah, no, 2.04, there was 8.40.
8.40.
What section talks about? Zoning administrator in that.
8.4 section 5.
Section 5.
Yeah, but it says if after investigation, the building administrator finds that any of the provisions of the ordinance is being violated.
Where you at?
And this is on 8.40.
8.40 outdoor lighting K.
Okay.
K5.
I only have 3.
That has to do with.
All I see is three.
That's probably.
What K5 are you got? It's only 5.
But
It's only 3.
See,
this copy is page, so it's an 8.4, I don't have the code at the moment, but it's in that area.
Do you want to look at your call?
It's off the 8.40.
K just says 1, 2, 3.
It says violation, legal actions and penalties, whatever.
Yes,
that means.
violation of legal actions of penalties. Number 1 is violations. 2 is violations of legal actions. 3 is penalties.
8 point, what are we looking at?
8.40 K.
I pulled it off line, so
I got this offline too.
let me go look.
This is.
Talk about the one that says Virgin Town Council may institute actions in proceeding.
This has been one of my questions. This is stuff like, yeah, it's there is violations, of legal action penalties. Is that even real? Should that even be in land use ordinances? Should that be a municipal code and a pointer from the land use ordinances?
Yeah, it's.
I hate that we have that stuff in land use, but that's just me.
My preference would be to take out.
I got it over.
I don't know where you got it.
I pulled it off the internet.
Haven't changed it in
I was gonna say,
a while. So.
I think we're all looking.
we're all looking at the same.
I see it, I see what you're looking here.
Who did you pull up there?
Yes.
I think this was changed, this February 24th, 2021.
Yeah, you know what I may have done, is you're not copying the wrong.
Maybe you have it long section.
So,
Okay.
but I will look at it and pass it on to Cameron and Sean. Or pass it on to you. I saw it in there. I did the same thing. I did the zoning administrator.
I think it'd be wise to take, if this is something for Cameron to know, is take the penalties and violation stuff. and
Just
remove that,
refer it
put
to one uniform section within our.
municipal code. We've got
Yeah,
several
we would-
places in Boone that does that. It's real confusing. Anyway, sorry, that's.
Okay, so, Carol, you wanted to talk about 4.04?
No, we already did. We already covered that.
No, I did not cover 4.0.
Well, you were asking where it talked about, let's see, I was just pointing out.
You're talking about his job description.
Yeah, I don't know,
No,
That
I don't
came
think
up
there-
as we
I don't
checked.
think there's any enforcement, well, let's see.
there's nothing in here to do with enforcement,
Yeah,
no. Okay, so there's that, and then, the only other place where the zoning administrator came up was 16.14, but that also, that's about construction.
yeah, that's all the place I saw when I saw construction.
Okay, so that's pretty much every place in the entire code where zoning administrator or code enforcement comes up. So the bits I have on here, on the agenda, we can go in and change zoning administrator, code enforcement officer. We don't need to change anything in either of the 260s. And,
Somebody getting this down for the commission to.
oh, I'll write an ordinance making these changes, but then we need to create. Yeah. I can have that for next, I can give that to zoning, to planning and zoning for next month. Then we have to work on a job description for code enforcement officer and create a position.
And we need to put some teeth behind it. Otherwise,
Yes,
it's
and then we have to work on that. And then we're gonna talk about budgeting money to pay a code enforcement officer, and we'll do that either November or December.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're going to make the first step here.
Look at, when you do that, also look at 52.04.
52.04.
Yeah,
What?
52.04.
Zoning administrator.
And it talks, the part about engineering requirements. It's under signs.
52.04, what's the,
Number one, it says the planning and zoning commission or zoning administrator may request proof of professional engineering.
one should remain?
That should be.
That's
That is
construction.
the rank.
Okay, no, I was just checking to make
Yeah.
sure that that was
Yeah.
accurate, okay. That's all the ones I saw.
Okay. All right. Wow. 8:56. Look at that. 4 minutes.
We're not done yet.
Make a motion.
Okay, make a motion.
Sure.
Hey, what? Coded, what? Public comment?
Okay. Make a motion to close the public meeting and open
Are we having a close?
closed session.
We are? Okay. Okay, I second.
Thank you.
Oh,
Let's take a vote
For what?
for, personnel matters.
I for me.
Aye.
Aye.